We need to continue to out-innovate the world. We need to continue to have a robust economy, and we need to be interconnected with the world. As someone who's also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I know that these economic consequences will make our world less safe, will make America less reliable. And so that's a big part of my outreach as well.
This is the Angel Next Door podcast, where we will talk about all things angel investing, what it is, who does it, how do we find them, what does it mean to invest in an early stage company. If you have ever wondered how you can affect the change you want to see in the world, then tune in to learn more. In this episode, I have the pleasure of talking to Rhode Island Congressman Gabe Amo. We discuss everything from small business to tariffs. One point of clarification, we mentioned the R&D, research and development, tax credit issue, but we didn't go into much detail. So here's the scoop, because it is really affecting entrepreneurs. For nearly 70 years, American businesses have been permitted to deduct 100% of the R&D expenses from taxable income in the year those expenses were incurred. But in 2022, the treatment changed. And rather than deduct R&D investment expenses immediately, companies are required to capitalize those costs and amortize them over 5 years for domestic research and 15 years for foreign research. This change increases federal tax liabilities for these companies investing in the future, including on federal grants. This has a lot of small early stage companies not just struggling, but fighting to stay alive, and many haven't made it. The Angel Capital Association has been working hard in Washington, D.C. to get this changed back to how it was before, but it has not been passed yet. Hopefully in upcoming episodes, I'll be able to share updates on this very important topic. In the meantime, enjoy the show with Congressman Amo. Congressman Amo, thank you so much for coming to the Angel Next Door podcast today. I appreciate you being here with us. You have had many different roles in the Obama administration, the Biden administration, roles in Rhode Island, and now a U.S. Congressman for Rhode Island. Tell us a little bit about your journey into Congress.
First off, thanks for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit about this work that can sometimes be and appear really opaque to America than it shouldn't be. I think we should not only know the work, but we should know the people behind it. And that's a great segue into sort of why I am here now, how I got here. In many ways, it's a testament to our country and the way that we nurture and inspire people that has landed me in the position of getting to serve the 550,000 people of Rhode Island's first congressional district. I'm the son of two West African immigrants. My dad was born in Ghana, my mom in Liberia, and they met in Rhode Island in the 80s. And they certainly thought that I would be in Congress one day, but they wanted their children, I've got 5 brothers and 2 sisters, blended family, to do well, to do as well as they could in this country. And for me, that has meant contributing to public service. I always thought that the biggest way to be involved in people's lives, to have a service orientation, was through government, because you can do so much at scale. When government is working, phenomenal historic legislation, things like the genius of Roosevelt in Social Security, what we've been able to do via Medicare, college access and affordability through the Pell Grant, named after the late great senator of ours here in Rhode Island, and so much more. And so I've always thought that's what I'd be doing. And so I got involved when I was young, volunteering, working on campaigns. My first jobs, non-campaign jobs in government, were working at the White House and working in the governor's office in Rhode Island. I got to work under President Obama and former Secretary of Commerce when she was the governor of Rhode Island, Gina Raimondo. And in all of those places, I was a glue guy, a person who managed relationships and also responded to emergencies and molded myself to challenges. And those challenges were varying from public health emergencies to the uncertainty of federal mandates, to emergencies in the form of wildfires and mass shootings, to investing in communities, finding transformational infrastructure investments, both when I worked for the governor and certainly later in my career, right before I came into Congress, when I worked for Joe Biden at the White House, when I was the special assistant to the president and deputy director of intergovernmental affairs, overseeing relationships with state and local elected officials and appointed officials across the country. And so when this seat opened up and David Cicilline, my great predecessor, decided to do something different, lead our largest community foundation here in the state, I said, I think I have the experience of making government work. Can I take that attitude that can-do spirit, that willingness to work with people to build strong relationships in order to forge progress. Can that work in our reality? And can I be an effective public servant for the people I represent? But they're more than the people I represent. They're people I've known my whole life. When I haven't been in a fancy job with a fancy title in Washington, back here in Rhode Island, my whole life. And so whether it's people who work with my mom in nursing homes or the customers of my dad's liquor store to everything in between, people who contributed to my life, from rides to Little League to helping me get the educational opportunities that I sought. There's so much connective tissue here between my work, my background, and how I view what we should be doing in the future.
Wow. So let's back up a minute. So your mom is from Liberia, your dad from. So how did they end up in the U.S., first of all? And then how did they end up in Rhode Island?
Yeah, my mom followed three siblings of hers to the States, and they were here in Rhode Island. And two of my uncles, one who's now passed away, an aunt of mine. And that story of wanting to do as much as you can economically to also help back home, but also forge new opportunity, was a big part of that for her. And the same thing for my dad, who as a young man was also leaving political uncertainty in Ghana. They were going through various forms of new governments following their independence in 1957. And that turmoil was part of his decision to try to be elsewhere. And with both of them, they come to a state that has this rich tradition of immigration. We have people from all over the place in Rhode Island, not just West Africa, but people from Cape Verde, people from Portugal, people more recently, people from the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and more traditionally our Italian and Irish immigrant communities that have gone strong for over 100 years. And they fit into that pot. And that's why I often said when I was running is that I felt like my story, a Rhode Island story, American story, is something that links all of us. I always believe that where we are and how driven we are is based on something special, right? A certain special sauce of the people who came before us, who exhibited a great amount of hard work, grit, resilience, and determination, because they wanted our tomorrow to be better than today. And that could keep us motivated in whatever form we're in, but certainly those who are of us in government, public service, to try to make that the reality, the better tomorrows than today's, the reality for as many people as possible.
That's awesome. And it sounds like your parents were both very entrepreneurial and had small businesses. And so tell us a little bit about the ecosystem, small business ecosystem in Rhode Island, and then what you think really across the U.S.
Look, we're a state of small businesses. Being the smallest state, our enterprises at the local level is what fuels us. I spend a lot of time with local chambers of commerce. I spend a lot of time with people who are sole proprietors, people who are in multi-generational family businesses who want to keep them that way, right? Everything from our local restaurants to our history in costume jewelry and jewelry manufacturing that goes back a long ways in our state, to even what we have done with regard to the maritime history that we have in our state, right? The Navy's origins are very much Rhode Island, as it is anywhere across the Atlantic seaboard, and boat building, shipbuilding has been part of that. And we've seen multi-generations, and even aquaculture and fishing and harvesting of those treasures of the ocean has been a real big part of it, our existence here as a state. It's part of our lifeblood. Of course, like everybody else, we've gone through waves of the global economy becoming more interconnected and the externalities that result in terms of manufacturing shifting, right? We are the home of Slater Mill, the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. And you go across the Blackstone Valley, where I represent, and you can see that legacy, those textile mills. Of course, that's not a major industry here anymore. So like anybody else, we've been subject to shifts. But for any big enterprise like that, you have a bunch of small businesses that fuel it. And so we are in a period of transition. I feel like we're always in a period of transition. We're in a period of transition where firms across the supply chains, all sorts of goods and products that have their antecedents in Rhode Island companies and the Rhode Island economy, are figuring out how to do something new or do something better. And I certainly will bring us to the contemporary, the modern moment, and the uncertainty driven by the tariffs and that regime being executed by the Trump administration has caused some concern for a lot of these folks. So one of the things that I fight for vigorously is a set of needs and priorities that Rhode Island small businesses need, wherever they are, whatever they're doing. My dad's a retail guy, and so that's like a lot different than the stuff that you make, but all of it matters.
Yeah. So speaking of that, since some of the things that have been going on very recently, tariffs, how are things like that affecting your community?
Yeah, I've heard it directly from many business owners where they have said when you put 145% tariff on things from China, it may be one component of the packaging material for the jewelry that's made here. They may have long developed contract with firms, and it may not be China, it may be Vietnam. But when you sort of create this instability and the lack of predictability for these companies, it's hard to execute any long-term contracts with suppliers wherever they are. And that can cripple our smallest businesses, especially those who are making the one tiny little piece of some larger instrumentation that's going across borders and may end up back here in a fully manufactured good, which is super common. And so the fact of the matter is, it's the small guys who cannot sustain those changes. Bigger you are, you can absorb in some way or another. Certainly some on the personnel side, but a lot of, if I take the whole range of manufactured goods that sometimes is in furniture, for example, we're not a big furniture state. You might be able to bake some of that in over time as something goes back and forth. But when you are a component, when you are the smallest unit, and there may be a competitor who is a cheaper alternative, wherever that alternative is, you are not able to tell your employees reliably that we're going to have this work moving. And I do have a great amount of concern for our small businesses here, and especially when they have seen turmoil in recent memory with regard to COVID-19. And that's just broad disruption in being able to deliver and coming right out from it. You saw a lot of these folks roar out of the gates once we put some of that behind us. And why would we put another impediment on them? And look, the high aspiration of wanting to bring back manufacturing is one that's laudable, but only if it's part of a broader strategy that does not hinder our ability to be competitive. The whole idea behind trade is you sometimes leave certain things behind because you don't need to do them anymore. And we know that's been part of our growth. It's not just the cheap goods. It's actually about how we out innovate. We innovate because we leave certain things behind and we say others can do it. And so I'm a pro trade person. I think we need to certainly protect our workers and our ability to make things at home, but those aren't mutually exclusive. And I think the actions that we've seen will only hurt us. I cannot see the positivity. And I'm not sure there are many people who actually see that being the brightest set of ideas either.
So, what are some of the things that can be done? What are you working on? What are some of the people that you're working with working on?
Yeah. So, what part of the challenge here is the executive branch has a lot of authority when it comes to trade. Structurally, that's how we've designed it. Now, one of the vehicles that the president has used to move forward in this fashion is by creating a set of emergency actions, and categorizing these things as an emergency gives the president far more leeway. And so I have put forward co-sponsorship on legislation that would help us get out of the emergency. Now we need bipartisanship to get this done because we don't have the numbers in the House of Representatives. We don't have the numbers in the Senate to do this unilaterally. And so we'll keep pushing on alternatives, joined hand in glove with Republicans to say we need to rein in the tariff authority that the president has carried forth. And so that's one vehicle. I think another is continuing to maintain our real big pressure and collaboration with the private sector. I think that government and private sector have to be hand in glove here. And so we saw, for example, a pause on the sort of arbitrary designations and tariffs on countries a few weeks ago, because we saw a big feedback mechanism driven not just by our words in Congress, but by the bond market, by others out there who are seeing the real consequences in real time. And so I say to colleagues in the private sector that it is incumbent on them also raise their voices in partnership with us. Because again, I truly believe that working towards America's economic strength is not a partisan exercise. We have to be collaborative. And if you see something you don't like, say something. Don't act out of fear, act out of aspiration, for the American people. We need to continue to out-innovate the world. We need to continue to have a robust economy, and we need to be interconnected with the world. As someone who's also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I know that these economic consequences will make our world less safe, will make America less reliable. And so that's a big part of my outreach as well.
Yeah, I love that. Out innovate the world. You are speaking my language. And one of the things when I say we, an Angel Capital Association, we were recently in Washington, D.C., and we're extremely supportive of the taxes that are around improving and expanding the Section 1202 QSBS eligibility for more businesses, making it easier and cheaper for these businesses to raise capital and giving businesses more flexibility in their financing options. This is through Representative Kustoff's bill, the Small Business Investment Act of 2025. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about next steps in the congressional process in order to get this bill and greater tax packages signed into law?
This is where we're in a tricky place.
Okay.
And so to zoom out a little bit, one of the conversations that we are having as a Congress, but as a country, is around how we respond to the looming expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts, with a legislative package. Now, my belief, and it's shared by a lot of economists, is the way that the tax bill was structured, it did not necessarily yield economic benefits for everybody. The top 5% received 50% of the benefits of the tax bill. There are real challenges with economic inequality in this country, and I think that would exacerbate some of that. And so what we have is, I sit on the budget committee. A budget committee just several weeks ago passed a resolution that called for tax cuts at the sort of basically $4.5 trillion of tax cuts, combined with cuts to key programs, Medicaid, SNAP, et cetera, so that to make the numbers work, it's still going to require us to borrow trillions of dollars to pay for these taxes. Now, the reason I set the frame with that is because I believe that is the part of the tax code that the folks in Washington are most focused on, less so the small business. And when I say folks in Washington, I don't want to be overly partisan, but that's what Republicans in Congress are focused on. And I say that because that's based in fact. On the budget committee, it was a partisan vote. The resolution that won out the day, it reflects only Republican priorities. They didn't even include us in that. And then they passed a subsequent resolution just a couple weeks ago that, again, reaffirms the commitment to tax cuts and cutting from key programs. Now, what will happen in the ensuing weeks is essentially the process of reconciliation, where they reconcile the deficit reduction with the deficit increase in their aspirations on these tax cuts. Now, the tax code was really complicated, right? And so any one string you pull is connected to something else, especially if you want to pay for it. Now, you could go around the way of just borrowing trillions of dollars, worsening our debt, which happened in the 2017 tax legislation, or you could try to right size it. Now, there are lots of provisions that could help small businesses. I don't know right now what's on the table, because this is in the early innings, and it will be a very partisan bill. The thing that I would say is, the more that we focus on small business, R&D, and innovation, the better we are. What I don't want to see is a bunch of actions that reduce and in some cases eliminate the tax burden on the wealthiest Americans. And notionally, I am strong in the direction of some of the progress that we saw just last year that did not get across the finish line. But in terms of the R&D investment tax credit that we know from both a practical and an accounting standpoint would help many of our small businesses realize the promise of the resource to help them invest in themselves and grow. And what I would say is, this is a time, listeners, if you have a priority that you want to see addressed in this pending legislation, to be reaching out to members of Congress, members of the Ways and Means Committee, who are literally drafters. But again, the members who are driving that are going to be in the Republican majority. And so the question for them is, how much are they going to prioritize individuals in the middle class and lower, our small businesses, and over tax breaks at the corporate level, and for individuals that don't need them. You've seen an acceleration in corporate buyback activity. You've seen over the last several years, you've seen the benefits be concentrated to the biggest of firms and not be spread to those who are leading, and are always on the cusp of innovation on the smaller side. So I would say that's super important. And when I look at the investment world, I think we should always be trying to grow. And the way you grow is you help the little guy. And that's really my focus going forward. And I'll say it, even if we don't have a seat at the table, I'm going to bring a folding chair. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to sit down. And I'm going to say, this is who you need to help.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And at the Angel Capital Association, we try very hard to have a grassroots effort also to make sure that people are knowing about what's going on in their local communities, because it's places like Rhode Island where we're seeing amazing entrepreneurs in every city, every town. And a lot of people don't realize that. I'm one of those people that really likes to shout out from the rooftops that there's innovation happening everywhere, and we really have to back those entrepreneurs.
Definitely.
Yeah. Congressman Amo, thank you so much for coming onto the Angel Next Door podcast today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having me. And to all those who are listening and who are helping to inspire our growth as a country, thank you for what you do. Stay in touch with me. And if you got a good idea, don't keep it to yourself. Let us know.
I love that. Thanks. Thanks for listening. To connect with me, visit my website at marciadawood.com. And please subscribe, follow, and leave a review. It helps the podcast get seen by more people. And remember, you can also find the Angel Next Door podcast on YouTube too. And if you're looking to learn more about investing in the changes you want to see in the world, sign up for Ann and Bill Payne's ACA Angel University classes. Go to the angelcapitalassociation.org, all one word, to find out the schedule. And classes are now available on demand. Many classes are offered, everything from angel investing basics, which include fundamentals, risk, due diligence, term sheets, valuations, returns and portfolio strategy, and even a class on group formation. There's even a deeper dive where you can get advanced classes, including capitalization tables, startup boards, and exit strategies. If you're not already a member of the Angel Capital Association, you can become one for a low price that will give you unparalleled access to discounts, free webinars with a huge archive of content, networking opportunities, and much more. We'd love to have you join us. All content for this website is informational and not intended to serve as legal, tax, accounting, or investing advice. Well, Marcia, that's me, does serve on the SEC Small Business Capital Formation Advisory Committee. My views are my own and not the views of the SEC or my fellow colleagues on the committee. Our speakers and hosts are thoughtfully selected for their educational value, but their opinions are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of the host, me, or the Angel Capital Association, and neither specifically endorse the use of presenters' products or services. Listeners of the podcast should consult their own tax, investing, legal, or accounting advisors before making important financial decisions. All warranties, including accuracy, completeness, and suitability for specific purpose, are disclaimed.